Welcome to the Full Moon Film Buff, episode 212. We're going to discuss Libahunt, which was released in 1968. I watched this on YouTube with a subtitle file from opensubtitles.org. I had not seen this before. As always, we start with the prominent crew and cast. You can find links to a more complete credit list in the show notes. Once again, my resources for researching Soviet-era Estonian filmmakers is very limited, and I apologize for my pronunciations. I'm sure I'm going to get these wrong. The film was directed by Leida Leas, written by Leida Leas and Lembit Remilgas. It's based on the 1912 tragic play by August Kitzberg. Leida Leas was a pioneering Estonian film director, regarded as one of the most important and influential filmmakers in Estonian cinema, particularly as a leading female voice during the Soviet era. She faced early hardships. Her father was executed during Stalin's purges, and she served as a nurse in the Red Army during World War II. She trained as an actress at the Estonian State Theatre Institute and later studied directing at the Gerasimov Institute of Cinematography in Moscow. Working primarily at Tallinn Film, her notable films include Libahunt, Korba Parames, The Master of Korboja, and she co-directed Nearata Ometi, The Smile at Last, which won international acclaim, including a UNICEF Prize at Berlin. Lembit Remilgas was an Estonian writer, translator, literary critic, and screenwriter associated with Tallinn Film. He worked as a journalist and editor in Soviet Estonia, serving in World War II-era publications, and held roles including Secretary of the Estonian Komsomol Central Committee and chief editor at Tallinn Film from the mid-1960s. He wrote or contributed screenplays to films such as Libahunt, Inimesed Soderisnellis, and Indrek. He was a member of the Estonian Writers' Union and translated works from Czech and Russian. August Kitzberg was a prominent Estonian writer and playwright whose works significantly influenced Estonian literature and cinema. He worked as a clerk and journalist before focusing on his writing. His village stories and plays often featured social criticism, humor, and mulgama, southern Estonian life. He is considered a founder of modern Estonian dramatic literature alongside figures like Eduard Vilde. The prominent cast includes Ene Remeld as Tina, Male Klassen as Mari, and Evald Hermakula as Marcus. Ene Remeld is an Estonian actress known for her roles in Soviet-era Estonian cinema and later cultural work in France. She also appeared in Lindperiod in 1971, which was banned for political reasons. Married to director Vladimir George Karasyov-Orgusar, she emigrated to France in 1981 amid challenges, where she performed Estonian poetry recitals internationally and worked at the Pompidou Center. She has returned to Estonia stages and films occasionally. This is Male Klassen's only credit. Evald Hermakula studied geology at the University of Tartu while training at the Venemuin Theatre Studio. He acted and directed at the Venemuin from 1962 to 1969 and later the Estonian Drama Theatre, artistic director from 1988 to 1991, introducing innovative existential approaches. So let's cover the plot. In early 19th century rural Estonia, villagers set a bonfire and pray to St. John for their crops to be successful. On the Tamaru farm, 3 children have grown up together, Margus, the son, and 2 orphan girls, Mari and Tina. Margus is drawn to the lively, nature-loving Tina, whose mother was once previously executed for witchcraft. The more conventional Mari, jealous and dutiful, accuses Tina of being a Libahunt, a werewolf. Margus initially tries to defend Tina, and what follows is a tragedy of gossip, suspicion, and a tragic witch hunt-like frenzy in their superstitious community. Tina's story is contrasted against what her mother endured. In the end, Tina leaves the village. The non-spoiler overview here, this is less a traditional horror film and more a slow-burn folk drama/tragedy, exploring how jealousy, superstition, and societal control can destroy people. The black and white cinematography and hypnotic pacing create a dreamy, unsettling atmosphere. It is beautifully shot, has a strong emotional core, and a haunting sense of inevitability. However, if you're coming for classic werewolf action, you will be sorely disappointed. It is subtle and accusatory rather than monstrous. The only print I could find was a very dark, and it took a lot of work to get subtitles into it. But for fans of atmospheric Eastern European cinema or folk horror like November, another Estonian gem, it is a hidden treasure. As for special effects or werewolf looks, there are none. There are no effects in the traditional sense. No practical makeup transformations, no CGI, and no on-screen werewolf creature. This film is all about the idea of the werewolf, the accusation and the fear it inspires. The horror comes from human superstition and mob mentality rather than fangs and fur. There are tense forest scenes, howling winds, and implied wilderness dangers, but lycanthropy fans are looking for transformation sequences will need to appreciate the subtext here because it's not shown. It works beautifully for what it is, a psychological and cultural exploration of the werewolf myth as a tool for othering the different or the free-spirited. The eerie score and stark visuals do all of the heavy lifting. Libahunt draws deeply from Estonian and broader European folklore. The werewolf here is tied to witchcraft accusations, inherited curses from a mother's rumored sins, and the wild forest versus civilized village divide. Traditional elements like superstition around full moons, silver, and the danger of the woods are mentioned in passing, but it's way more about social hysteria than actual shape-shifting. The film adds wrinkles by framing the werewolf label as a weapon in a love triangle and as a way to enforce conformity in a serfdom-era peasant society. Tina represents untamed nature and capital R romantic freedom, clashing with church, landlord, and communal expectations. It's a tragic take where the monster is society itself. There's no packs, no bites turning victims. It's personal and accusatory, echoing real historical witch hunts. The original play is much more definitive in that Tina really is a werewolf, which I interpret as something of a subversion of the social commentary that got left out of the movie. As I understand it, I've never actually seen the play. Now, this is based, like I said, on August Kitzberg's influential 1912 play, which also had been adapted into a ballet and a musical. Apparently, Tina has become something of a cultural symbol for freedom in Estonia. Now, it shares folklore DNA with later Estonian films like November from 2017, which has actual werewolf elements and Kratz, mythical creatures, and we're going to actually get to that movie later. Similar movies in this subgenre. It does remind me a bit about other atmospheric accusation-driven stories like The Witch for the Puritan hysteria, or other subtle Eastern European horrors. It's folk horror before the term was really invented. So let's talk about the metaphor of the werewolf in Libahunt. Set against the backdrop of Estonian folklore, Libahunt transforms the traditional werewolf legend into a potent social metaphor, revealing how fear of the other can be weaponized to suppress individual freedom, nonconformity, and personal desire. Through the story of Tina, a strong-willed young woman linked to nature and to a cursed family lineage, the film exposes the destructive interplay of jealousy, ostracism, and collective paranoia. The real monsters here, it insists, are not supernatural beasts lurking out in the woods, but they're the closed minds and envious hearts within the village itself. At the heart of the film lies the tension between superstition and individual freedom. Tina's defiance marks her as dangerous. Mari's accusation of lycanthropy is not rooted in any genuine belief that Tina is a monster. It's a weapon to eliminate a romantic rival, one that doubles as a tool for policing anyone who threatens the established order. In a society bound by tradition, religious dogma, and serf-like hierarchy, any display of autonomy or wildness invites suspicion. Tina's strength and independence become, in the village's eyes, evidence of this curse, illustrating how fear is systematically deployed to enforce conformity. The cost of her freedom is profound. She's isolated, persecuted, and ultimately forced out. The film demonstrates that in such an environment, personal liberty is sometimes not only merely discouraged, but pathologized as something that's inhuman and threatening to the entire community. This dynamic is reinforced through mechanisms of ostracism and social control. Labels function as weapons, much as ideological terms like capitalist or communist have in various historical regimes. They've been wielded as tools of revenge and exclusion. In Libahunt, the accusation of being a werewolf operates just the same way. It isolates the target, justifies communal violence against them and rejection, and reinforces the power of the group over the individual. The village's rigid structure leaves little room for any nuance or mercy. Those who deviate are cast out under the guise of protecting the whole collective from supernatural evil. Anytime anyone's talking about the greater good, be prepared for them to be evil. The critique extends beyond folklore to a broader commentary on xenophobia, purity tests, and feudal-style oppression. The werewolf legend becomes a mirror for societal ills rather than a horror tale in its own right. Central to the tragedy is the love triangle involving Tina, Marcus, and Mari. Mari's rumors, born of her romantic rivalry and personal envy, escalate into a communal destruction. Private resentment metastasizes through superstition into collective hysteria. The narrative underscores this classic cautionary lesson that unchecked emotion, channeled through a superstitious worldview, produces irreversible harm. Marcus, caught in the middle, embodies passive complicity. His initial ability, and later his unwillingness to challenge the rising tide of accusations, shows how ordinary people enable tragedy through silence and inaction. The love triangle is the engine of the film's social critique, showing how these people's private failings, envy, weakness, and possessiveness fuel the broader machinery of control and persecution. Ultimately, the werewolf in Libahunt serves as a rich metaphor for the untamable, wild side of humanity that societies always seek to suppress. Folklore often casts the beast as the eruption of repressed instinct. The film borrows this imagery to indict the villagers' closed-mindedness, its fear of nature, its fear of femininity, of independence. The true horror resides in the hearts and minds of the closed-minded community. By externalizing their own conflicts onto a supernatural accusation, not even a proven one, the villagers avoid confronting their own jealousies, cruelties, and their desire for dominance. Tina's story reveals the high price of authenticity in an inauthentic world, one where freedom is equated with monstrosity. Even over 50 years later, Libahunt remains a resonant work because its themes transcend its Estonian setting and its 1968 context and its 19th century setting. It warns against the perennial temptation to use superstition, rumor, and ideological labeling to enforce conformity and punish differences. A warning that feels especially urgent in an era where social media and polarized discourse can transform a personal grudge into collective condemnation almost overnight. True liberation, the film suggests, doesn't require confronting mythical beasts, but the very human tendency toward fear, envy, and control that lurk within each and every one of us, and especially when you get a bunch of us together. By embracing the werewolf within, the wild, free, authentic self, rather than hunting it down, a society might finally escape its own self-imposed curse. So, do I recommend it? For diehard lycanthrope fans, approach this film as a deep-cut folk tragedy rather than a creature feature. If you love atmospheric, slow-burn stories with strong cultural roots and subtext about persecution, think the most poetic European art house horror you can imagine. This is a rewarding, obscure gem. It has no transformations, but its emotional and thematic depth around the werewolf myth makes it worthwhile. I'd say stream it if you're into international folk horror. Skip it if you need a visual werewolf. It is definitely worth it for completeness in the subgenre. So, if you like lycanthropes, like, share, and subscribe. Contribute your thoughts and additional observations in the comments below. Let me know what I missed or what you noticed. Next, I plan to discuss Red Riding Hood from 2011. Keep your eye on the moon, a silver bullet in the chamber, and we'll see you back here next episode.